Welcome to the second in our series of political candidate forums in advance of the November 5th general election. This forum, a cooperative production of the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee, the Tallahassee Democrat, and WFSU Public Media. Our candidates today are running for Florida's State House District 9 seat. I'm Tom Flanagan from WFSU Public Media, and I'm joined by James Call from the Tallahassee Democrat and Danielle Irwin from the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee. We're going to be questioning the candidates on various topics of interest to the voting public.
The candidates for the State House District 9 seat, sitting left to right, are Republican Spencer Brass and Democrat Allison Tant, who is the incumbent in this race. A reminder for those watching us on social media, please hit the share button and help all your friends see today's discussion live. For those at home, here's how the forum works. We'll rotate which candidate gets to answer first. We have a lot of questions, so we're going to ask the candidates to keep your answers to about 60 seconds, sometimes shorter for follow-up. We will keep time. We have a bell, which we will ding when your time is up. You don't have to come to a dead stop right then, but finish your sentence and we'll move on.
If you're watching live on Facebook and you have a question for the candidates, go ahead and type them in the comments and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Time is very limited, so you can improve your chance of your question being asked if you keep it brief, polite, and make it applicable to both candidates. Any questions before we begin?
Nope.
Then let's just jump in with the first question.
We will jump right into it, and we will give each of the contenders here 60 seconds to answer the question. I do have a couple of follow-ups. And Mr. Brass, if we could start with you, please. Many say this may be the most important election of our lifetime. Their frame is national and international events, but ours is just a touch closer to home for the Leon, Jefferson, and Madison County residents of District 9. So why is this election important, do you think? 60 seconds.
Well, I think on the national level, things are much different locally, right? Locally, there are several issues that need to be addressed. Going out and knocking tens of thousands of doors, you talk to a lot of people and get to hear directly from the folks of District 9 what the priorities are. In District 9, the priorities that we have identified are the homeless and mental health crisis. It's a massive issue in our community. It needs swift, divisive action to begin to address. Our infrastructure. Every time we have an afternoon storm, there shouldn't be power outages. We need to begin putting together a plan for power line burial while preserving the natural beauty of the canopy roads in Tallahassee. You look at economic opportunity, you start to go out to the more rural counties, Jefferson and Madison County. The folks there need opportunity, and we've got to begin working on those things by working hand in hand with our state, local, and federal partners, attracting good, high-paying jobs so that those can raise a family without having to leave their extended family to go find one of those jobs.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Tant, same question, please.
This election is vitally important to Tallahassee and to the state of Florida. Taking that national frame down to the state frame, which are the issues that we address here at the state level, we have two ballot initiatives in particular that I think demand very close attention of our electorate, one of which is the ballot initiative that impacts the lives of women and their health care, along with the girls and the families of our state for the foreseeable future. That is Amendment number 4. Amendment number 3 is another one that I think that is going to impact us as a state, and that is the adult use of marijuana. That is Amendment number 3 that is on the ballot. So while every election, the other thing about every election, and particularly this election, is that this is the time for citizens to be able to lend their voice into how they want to see the state and the direction that we're going in as a state and as a nation.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up starting with you, Ms. Tant. What's the number one challenge in your district, and how do you propose to solve it? 45 seconds.
There's a lot of challenges in the whole district. So in District 9, you have Leon County, Jefferson, and Madison County. The three of them are like my three different children, all of them very different with different needs. And so balancing the needs of those fiscally restrained counties that don't have the resources that we have here in Leon County, and educating my peers in the legislature about fiscally restrained counties and what they face, along with bringing resources that we do have here in Leon County to outlying counties, is something that I think bears the work of whoever holds this seat. We do have a homeless issue, and thankfully we have the Kearney Center here. We do have mental health issues, which we have terrific resources in the area here that I bring to the East Coast from
Okay,
here.
thank you. Mr. Brass, please.
Yeah, so I agree with Representative Tant. It's a very diverse district because you have an urban core in Tallahassee, and then you have a more rural area in Jefferson and Madison County. They are very fiscally constrained counties, and it's very important that we have a representative that's in the majority party that can work with the majority and bring the wins home, bring the resources down from the state to those two respective counties. When you move over to Leon County, I've said it before and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, homeless and mental health is the #1 crisis that we're facing here. You know, I was very lucky to be appointed by Leon County Sheriff Walt McNeil to lead the group of stakeholders over on the West Pensacola Street corridor as we work to begin to address these issues. And I work very closely with the Kearney Center Executive Director, Sonia Wilson, and the Sheriff's Office as we continue moving that needle forward.
Thank you.
Okay, starting with you, Ms. Tant, Florida was in a property insurance crisis before this hurricane season. We can only imagine where we will be at the end of the year. Citizens Property Insurance, backed by Florida taxpayers, is the biggest insurer in the state.
Yes, it is.
What do you think is the solution to the property insurance crisis, and is a special session needed to help with the recovery?
We've had four sessions that we've dealt with the insurance issues, and we're not doing enough. Citizens is the insurer of last resort, or supposed to be. And so when they run into a deficit, we are then, all of us on the private market side, assessed a fee to help bring them back into solvency. They're not facing that right now, according to the latest information I have. What we've done with the insurance crisis is anyone who was within 20% of what the cost impact is or the cost estimate is for a citizens policy has to roll off Citizens and go into the private market. We obviously need more in the private market so that we can stay a robust private insurance market along with Citizens. There's another idea that's out there that's a very interesting idea that my colleague Hillary Cassell has raised, which is like a universal Citizens, and just, you know, everybody be on the Citizens plan. I think that bears some further discussion, and I think that you're going to see more of that in the sessions to come.
Thank you. Mr. Brass?
Yeah, can you just repeat it one more time, please? And how long do I have? 60?
You have 60 seconds. Florida was in a property insurance crisis before this hurricane season. We can only imagine where it will be at the end of the year. Taxpayer-backed Citizens Property Insurance is the biggest insurer in the state. What is your solution to the property insurance crisis? And is a special session needed to help with the recovery?
Yeah, so, you know, I haven't sat in the legislature before, so I haven't been able to work on this issue. But what I can say, like everything, a fair market is needed, right? Citizens Insurance is the state insurance company. It is the insurer of last resort. And I think that a lot of people have become very comfortable just leaning on that instead of really finding positive solutions. So while we talk a lot about insurance company bailouts, I think instead of it being a bailout, it's an opportunity to keep those insurance companies afloat, so that we can continue to have a fair market and not create a monopoly in Florida. Further education. We have to educate the consumers in Florida that filing an insurance claim for everything is going to just come back and haunt us all. I know that there's been lots of work in the legislature to harden folks' homes, especially on the coast, and those who are not able to afford those hardening resources. But we have to continue to educate the consumer that this is very cyclical, and for us to get out of this, we're all going to have to work together. It's not the legislature alone that's going to solve the problem.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question, too, because there's also an affordable housing crisis in Florida. The legislature's response, has been to make money available to build multifamily units and developments. Is there anything that the legislature can do to create more affordable single-family homes for Florida families who live on a median family income of $67,000? 45 seconds. Start with you, Mr. Brass.
Sure. So it's no secret that I'm the big bad developer in the race, and so I am in this and I researched this extensively. I think one of the big things, because the state and federal governments have put a lot of money forward to making this happen, the thing that lacks and the thing that we really see in the market is that it's very cumbersome and it's very difficult. So the next thing that the legislature, I think, needs to look at is a more streamlined process for these developers to be able to come in and actually obtain these funds to be able to build these affordable units. We have the funds there, but they're very hard to get to. So if we can bridge that gap, I think we're going to start moving this in the direction a lot quicker and a lot sooner.
Thank you. Ms. Tant?
Thank you. In respect to affordable housing, I have actually built an affordable housing community, and I've done it the right way with vetting by appropriate developers in good standing who do the work. It should be hard to access public funding. It should not be so hard, though, that we can't get the work done. In terms of affordable housing, I think there's a couple of things we can do. We need to incentivize local governments to work to ensure that we put together public-private partnerships to get units built and made. That would be targeted specifically to, and maybe doing some low interest or no interest rate loans for people that can get into their homes for the first time, specifically targeting first responders and school teachers. And I think that would be a really sweet spot to go and try to help people get into home ownership.
Thank you.
Let's see, I think you have a follow-up there.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Brass, what can be done to reduce the growing number of homeless people, and do you support the legislature's solution of banning public sleeping? 1 minute.
Sure. So this has been a very big topic. I mean, I've already said it, and I'm working in it almost every single day. Like I said before, Sheriff Walt McNeil appointed me to lead the group of stakeholders along the West Pensacola Street corridor, which locally, arguably, is ground zero for the homeless crisis. So what needs to happen is everyone needs to come together. Everyone is operating on an island. We see it every day. You have the Kearney Center, you have Hope, you have CCYS, you have the resources there, but these people are not communicating. There is no coalition. The Big Bend Continuum of Care, the Kearney Center, CCYS, Hope, everyone needs to come together. I propose a monthly roundtable. Homelessness by its very nature is a network, and the homeless service providers need to be a network as well to combat this crisis. And there was a second part, but...
Do you support banning of public sleeping?
Yes, I do support that. And I don't support the being mean to people, but what I do support is holding the municipalities accountable to come up with real solutions, which I think is the real spirit of that law.
Thank you. Ms. Tant?
Thank you. In respect to our homelessness issue in Tallahassee, we do have the Kearney Center. They do offer services. The Kearney Center is actually becoming a hub for homelessness where people from other states are bringing their homeless to us. So under the law that was passed, we actually have to, the city, every municipality in Florida has to create an encampment. I think that there's some land out there that the city owns on Tennessee Street that would be a perfect location for an encampment, which is not far from where the Kearney Center is, where people could actually access and receive the services they need to help them combat homelessness. And so there is a provision in that statute that was passed that requires our municipality to do so. So we are going to have to bring them into the solution as well.
Thank you.
We're going to shift to talk about education now. Mr. Brass, we'll start with you. The Florida Constitution requires the state to establish a high-quality system of free public schools that allows students to obtain a high-quality education. Yet the National Assessment of Education Progress shows students continue to struggle. Is Florida public education adequately funded to meet the constitutional mandate of high quality? 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think that there's been record funding put into education. Coupling with funding, we need to pay for results, right? And I think what we're seeing a lot in our communities is mental health is a huge crisis, and poverty is a huge crisis. And as things are becoming more difficult at home, it's becoming more difficult for students to be able to learn at school. So while we are doing record numbers of funding, we need to start looking at this from a more holistic perspective. And I think we really need to start in the mental health space. That is becoming a very big issue. And if you aren't right in your head, if you aren't right in your body, you're never going to be able to learn. So funding, I think, is there, but I think that there's work to be done in other areas to really bring it home.
Thank you. Ms. Tant?
Thank you. I do not believe that we are adequately funding our public schools. If anything, we are setting up funding models that drain money from our public schools and set up alternative ideas of education that work for some but don't work for others, that I think are vastly different in terms of what they deliver, how they deliver it, and their accountability to the public for the delivery of those services, so those educational services. So I think, in my view, we need to fully fund our public schools because we need them to be there for our students when they leave these alternatives that are out there.
Thank you. I have a follow-up. Ms. Tant, we'll start with you. Florida allocated about $2 billion this year for family empowerment scholarships, known as school vouchers for private schools. The money funds a program that competes with public schools for tax dollars, yet the private schools where the vouchers are spent are not required to meet the curriculum and teacher certification standards that public schools are. What do you think of this system? 45 seconds.
Thank you. This system is, we get in my legislative office several calls a week, if not a day, about problems with this system. The funding that is supposed to accompany the children is often delayed to the point where the schools are having to take out personal loans of by their administrators to make payroll. We are funding things that are not educationally relevant, in my view, such as cruises, such as 55-inch TV screens that are attached to a wall but not a tablet or a laptop that a child can use for actual educational purposes. I believe that a school district that was created, is now the 5th largest school district in the country, and they have to get it right. And we've got to have apples and apples when we're shopping schools that we can compare and make sure that parents who are driving these decisions can make that choice.
We'll allow Mr. Brass to respond to the same question.
Repeat it for me, please.
Sure. Florida allocated about $2 billion this year for the family empowerment scholarships, known as school vouchers for private schools. This money funds a program that competes with public schools for tax dollars, yet the private schools where the vouchers are spent are not held to the same curriculum and teacher certification standards as traditional public schools. What do you think of this system? 45 seconds.
So I definitely think that there is a space for this system. You know, when you start going out into the more rural counties, Jefferson and Madison County, which historically have had absolutely failing public schools, it was imperative that those parents were able to remove their children from those public schools and put them into charter schools, private schools, home schools, to be able to really save the very essence of their child's education. You know, I think it's important. We often make this a Republican-Democrat issue, but my opponent did get $263,000 for Brownsville Academy, which is a private school in Tallahassee. Mm-hmm. So when we look at putting, the argument often is that Democrats don't think that public funds should be used for private schools. It's very hypocritical.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're off to a new topic, being campaign finance. And we'll start with you, Mr. Brass. In 45 seconds, please, could you characterize your opponent's campaign financing and donors?
Sure. It's all lobbyists and special interests. I mean, I was counting this morning. I think there's been Allstate, there's been several insurance companies, several special interest groups, large corporations that have donated to her campaign. Ultimately, she did spend 35 years as a lobbyist, so it's no surprise that she should be able to fundraise. So congratulations to her for being able to do that. But whenever you really look at where those funds are coming from, they're not coming from the average Joe. They're coming from lobbyists and special interest groups.
Ms. Tant, same question, please.
My donations come largely from regular people who live in Tallahassee, along with some of the folks that he mentioned, but I have really hundreds of donors who are everyday citizens right here in Tallahassee. I am not actually been a 35-year lobbyist. I was in the system as an aide for 7 years and then a few years after that as a lobbyist before I left the workforce to take care of a disabled child for 20 years. So I've been back now as an elected official for 4 years, and that's what I've been doing with my time. In terms of your donations, my opponent's donations are from big developers who want to pave over our state.
Okay, follow up here, Mr. Brass. Tallahassee Democrat analysis found that both of you are among the wealthiest local candidates running for office in the area in this particular election cycle. So how does your net worth inform your policy and approach to serving middle-class residents of your district? 45 seconds.
Sure, I come from a very middle-class family. My father was a cop, my mom was a teacher. My donors are some of my closest friends, and I would think that you'd want your elected official to be supported by his local friends. But I think my age and clearly my net worth speak for itself. I have grit, I have determination, I don't take no for an answer, and where there's a will, there's a way, and I get things done. An elected official, those are the exact things that you want in them. You don't want them to take no for an answer when they're fighting for your community. You want them to have grit. You don't want them to be swayed from their values, from their principles, and from the priorities. And that's exactly what you're going to get from me. You're going to get my professional life morphed with a private emphasis or with a public emphasis, and we're going to do great things in District 9 with those two things combined together.
Okay, Ms. Tant, please.
Would you repeat the question?
Sure. The Tallahassee Democrat analysis found that you and your opponent are among the wealthiest local candidates in this particular electoral cycle. So how does things like your net worth inform policy and your approach to serving middle-class folks in your district?
My net worth is really related to my beloved husband's net worth. And so I come from a very humble background. I worked hard. I was the first in my family to go to college. And so I went into state government. Then I went into the private sector where I was an advocate. And then I am lucky that I have been where I've been. In terms of my family and life, my mother grew up in poverty. She picked berries and tobacco in the fields of North Carolina to feed herself and her 7 siblings and her mother. My father was placed in an orphanage at the age of 8, where he graduated from high school at 18 from that orphanage and went into the Merchant Marines. I come from picking crops in my front yard and eating the fish that my father caught in the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brass, a question just for you. In state-required financial disclosure filings, your biggest asset of $5.4 million was redacted. So could you share what and why that is in about 30 seconds?
Sure. I'm a protected voter, so I have the protections of the state statutes because my father arrested murderers for his career. So I think it's warranted that my family is protected. If we have to know it's an apartment complex, whoop-de-doo.
All right. Thank you, sir. James.
It's an apartment complex in Texas. It's a development. Excuse me.
Thank you. Ms. Tant, this is for you.
Yes.
We'll begin this question for you, with you, and this is 45 seconds. Discussions about sexuality, gender, and parental rights have been highlighted in this race by commercials and mailers alleging that you support sex change surgery for children, teaching gender ideology to kindergartners, and allowing men to compete in women's sports. Are these accurate descriptions of your position?
Absolutely not.
Could you explain, please? 45 seconds.
Well, it's going to take more than that. So first of all, in one bill, what we had done the previous year was require educators to teach children about stranger danger and don't let anybody touch you where your bathing suit covers. The next year we come in with this bill that is referred to by my opponent as we're going to teach gender ideology, which actually didn't do that, and it endangered that teaching that was as long as it was developmentally appropriate, and it imperiled teachers in our classroom from being able to have photos on their desks of their partners or their family, like Spencer's mom, who would have a picture of him on her desk with his spouse. The same thing would apply here. If they had a same-sex child, they wouldn't be able to have a picture on their desk.
Thank you. Mr. Brass, those are commercials in support of your campaign. Equal time, 45 seconds.
Sure. The only one who cares about my sexuality here is my opponent. She was really slick right after I got into this campaign. She sent pictures of my husband and I to conservative pastors in Madison County and got me kicked out of an event. She also sent pictures of my husband and I to conservative county commissioners over in Madison and Jefferson County so that their guiding principles could guide them from immediately not supporting me. So if we want to look at who actually supports the LGBTQ community here, while she may seem to do it whenever there's an opportunity to weaponize it against somebody, she took that opportunity, ran with it, and blatantly encouraged discrimination against me because of my sexuality.
Interestingly enough, that was going to be the follow-up question, but the question that was asked concerned those three bills referenced
Sure.
in the infamous iceberg commercial.
Yeah.
Would you like 45 seconds to address that?
Sure. I mean, it's a voting record. The bill text is available online. It's a voting record. The sources are on all the commercials. My entire campaign has been based in policy. It has not been based in personal attacks. It's been based in policy. The policy is available for folks to go and research, and I stand behind it.
And the follow-up question is, you mentioned that you're married, you have a husband.
Sure.
How does your position on these issues square with the LGBTQ community?
The vast majority of the LGBTQ community just wants to exist. I have never been discriminated in my life until I got into this campaign, and it was by my opponent. Never have I ever been discriminated against. There are certain very minute people in the world that will discriminate. Just like there's still a very small percentage of people that will encourage and participate in racism. A lot of the people in the LGBTQ community just want to exist. And if we would just calm the narrative, people would be able to exist and get along. But it's very inflammatory.
Thank you. We broke the format. I believe that you're entitled to at least a minute for rebuttal, Ms. Tant.
Thank you. First of all, that never happened. I did not send pictures anywhere. I don't even have pictures to send. So that's one thing that is incorrect. Secondly, my daughter is gay, and I would never discriminate against someone who's gay because I have a family member who's gay. Thirdly, there was never a bill that said we have to teach gender ideology. There was a bill that basically said that people who are gay cannot talk about being gay in our schools, or teachers can't talk about it. Neither can we talk about it in any books. That led to a book ban. That my opponent would absolutely vote against a bill that would keep him from having his beautiful wedding picture on the desk of a school teacher who was his mom, or have a child bring a homework assignment in with a family tree that had 2 aunts or 2 uncles or 2 moms or 2 dads, and be against the law, is inappropriate. This, by the way, led to book bans, and Jefferson County closed its library for a school year.
Thank you.
School year.
We're going to move rapidly into the topic of labor. The next question is for Mr. Brass. A public radio investigation finds more than 63,000 public sector employees have lost collective bargaining rights. 54 public sector unions have been terminated since Governor Ron DeSantis signed Senate Bill 256 into law last year. Decertified unions include those for workers at Leon County Schools, FSU, and FAMU. Does Senate Bill 256 need to be revisited? 45 seconds.
I don't know the exact text of the Senate bill, right? I wasn't in the legislature last year, but what I can say is that there are some instances where I do believe a union is warranted, but to a certain degree. I mean, my husband is a member of one of the largest unions in the country, the Airline Pilots Association union. So I do believe that they can be warranted and they can do productive work, but at the same time, they can be very counterintuitive and exploit some of their very basic principles.
Thank you. Ms. Tant.
I back our unions, and I believe that they should have collective bargaining rights, and we've seen too much encroaching on them to be able to do that for themselves and their employees.
Well, we're going to stay with you, Ms. Tant, for the follow-up. The average pay for 96,000 state of Florida employees is about $46,000. The average pay in Florida is $52,000. Do you think state of Florida pays a competitive wage? 45 seconds.
Thank you. I do not. Furthermore, in speaking with some of our business groups, I have learned that our 25-year-old to 45-year-old residents are leaving the state of Florida in droves. That is a new data point that is coming out as we've doing some studies this year. They're leaving because they cannot afford to live here, because we're grossly underpaying our folks. We're not reinvesting in a private business would reinvest profits back into its own infrastructure. The state of Florida should do the same, and that includes their employees, that includes the work that we do. And so I think that that's an issue, but that we are losing employees, our workforce, our 25 to 45-year-olds is a problem for us, and they're also taking our school children with them.
Thank you. Mr. Brass.
Yeah, so I think that Florida's done an incredible job of attracting great companies to come to the state and open up shop and give people high-paying jobs. As far as our state employees, absolutely, I think that we need to continue to increase their wages. And I do believe some of the feedback that I've gotten from knocking on doors is that my opponent voted against state employee wage increases last legislative cycle. So absolutely, I will continue state employees being able to have a very high-paying wage and great benefits.
Ms. Tant, would you like a 15-second rebuttal there?
That is absolutely, again, not true. We voted in our last three budgets for pay increases for state employees, which I was very intentional about making sure they got. We increased the number of months you can be in drop now, which is something I was very intentional in making sure we got. So I stand by our state employees because I was one.
Okay, one final follow-up on the topic of labor. Mr. Brass, we're back with you. The state-managed Florida retirement system is the pension system for 1 million public sector workers. There have been numerous attempts to move FRS away from a defined benefit plan to a 401k style investment plan. Would you support such a move? 45 seconds.
So that's like trying to swallow the ocean in 45 seconds. That's a huge issue. When you look at FRS and how many people it serves, we can't get into all of the nuances here in 45 seconds, but what I will say about that issue is I think it gets blown out of proportion that there's a massive deficit in the FRS program and there's all of these issues with it. What needs to happen is we need to continue looking at where we can make cuts. We need to continue looking at the trends of our retirees and how we can do it. And I also think that we need to institute the cost of living increase. That needs to come back for those who are taking advantage of FRS. So I can't swallow that in 45 seconds, but there's a big one. The COLA needs to come back.
Thank you. Ms. Tant.
I have voted for COLA increases for the last couple of years because I do know our retirees are not being able to keep up with the expenses because of the cost of living increases. My parents both retired from the railroad where they worked their entire lives, and they had defined benefits, and it made their lives incredibly stable as they aged and as they left the workforce and lived a very, very robust senior citizenry with that defined benefit. So I support defined benefits.
Thank you.
All right, we are off to the topic of firearms. This is something not too controversial for sure here. And each of you gets 60 seconds for this opening question. We have a couple follow-ups too. And starting with you, Ms. Tant, according to the Gun Violence Archive, there were 25 mass shootings in Florida in the first 9 months of this year. So in your view, what could be done to reduce gun violence in Florida?
First of all, after the Parkland shooting, we passed some really strong measures to create red flag laws and to raise the age of access to purchase guns. I do think we need to have permitting. I do think we need to have background checks. I do think we need to have training with guns. And it is in this day and age for our parents, for every parent to worry that this might be the last day they see their school child, or for a school child to be sitting in class and hear gunshots outside their classroom door, is not the way that we should be living our lives in America. That grown-ups cannot go to a movie or to a concert without fear of a mass shooting, or in our community, a yoga class where we had a shooting. We've got to do better, and we've got to do more, and I think that we need to have much stronger a review of those issues.
Thank you. Your take, Mr. Brass, please.
Yeah, so my father was a cop for 30 plus years, and a criminal is going to get a gun, whether it's legal or illegal, or they steal it or they obtain it legally through a dealer. You're never going to be able to regulate a criminal getting their hand on a gun. That's in the exact nature of them being a criminal. So when we look at gun control and those issues, guns don't get up and kill people. Mental health is far and wide the reason for these mass shootings. Now you zoom this in on a local level. We've had many shootings here on a local level, many deaths here this year because of gun violence in Tallahassee. That is gang and drug related. And that goes back to the investment in our local law enforcement. The City of Tallahassee Police Department, Leon County Sheriff's Office needs more funding, they need more resources, and they need more law enforcement officers to combat this gang and drug activity.
All right, sir. A quick 30-second follow-up, if we could, sir. A federal appeals court is now looking at the constitutionality of Florida's minimum age requirement of 21 when it comes to buying rifles and long guns. Should teenagers have their access restricted to these kinds of weapons?
I mean, I think that there's a time and place for that to occur. You know, Florida's very diverse. And I mean, I grew up in a very small town, and it wasn't uncommon for a 15, 16-year-old to have a long gun in their truck and going out and riding the pastures. It's, you go to Madison, Jefferson County, it's probably very similar over there. But these people are trained, and it goes back to the training, and it goes back to the intent of why do they have this gun? Do I think that the government needs to overregulate it? No.
Oh, okay, Ms. Tant, please.
I grew up with guns. My dad had guns. My son has guns, and my grandma kept one propped up behind her bedroom door, a rifle. So I do see that, and people hunt, and that is a source of their food supply. So whatever the courts decide on the constitutionality of that is something that the legislature will have to grapple with in terms of any legislation after that. So, and my dad was the most responsible gun owner I ever knew. I do think we need child locks. I do think we need to keep our guns locked and be like my dad.
Okay, another follow-up here, 30 seconds. In Florida, college and university campuses are gun-free zones. Representative Randy Fine said he would introduce legislation in the upcoming session to repeal the gun-free designation and allow folks to carry concealed weapons on campus. So how would you vote on such a proposal, and explain why? Ms. Tant, start with you, please.
With 3 colleges, with 3 universities and colleges throughout my district, I do not see having guns on campus as a safe place for our love. You've already got the hormones, the immaturity, alcohol use, things of that nature that can really drive up the gun use. Further, we even had an experience here in a college dorm at FSU where a young man was cleaning his gun and shot his girlfriend. And I just don't think that that is inappropriate. I would not be voting in favor of that based on what I know about the bill right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brass.
Yeah, so I think the bill is in a very preliminary state, taking it at the surface level. Do I think that it's responsible for kids to be walking around FSU with their guns? Yeah, no, I don't think so. But it's probably not the intent of the entire bill, so it's very hard to speak to that at this time. But do I think that college students need to be walking around with their guns? No, I don't. I don't think so. I think that's ludicrous.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Florida has a number of constitutional amendments on the ballot this year, so we'll have a few questions on those. Starting with Mr. Brass. A New York Times poll this week found the proposed amendment to limit government interference with abortion is falling short of the needed 60% of the vote to be implemented. Where do you stand on Amendment 4? And what role should the legislature take if the amendment passes? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, so, these amendments on the ballot are very inflammatory this year. And a lot of people are basing their selection of their candidates based on these amendments, right? And I think that it's great that all of the amendments are on the ballot this year because it truly gives the people of the state of Florida the ultimate voice in what they want to see with these amendments. As far as how I stand on them, that's between me and the ballot box, and that's how it's going to stay.
Ms. Tant, 1 minute.
Amendment 4 is a ballot initiative that is crucial to the lives of women in this state. I support that amendment, and the reason I support that amendment is that House bill, the 6-week abortion bill is extremely limiting. The so-called exemptions that are on that bill are not real exemptions. My mother nearly died after she got toxemia, and was literally, the doctor was fighting for her life. And under our current law, if she had been in a hospital on that gurney today, the doctor would have had to left her side to go write a letter, find another doctor in that rural hospital to sign the same letter, and then get back to trying to save her life. The doctor told my dad, you don't get both. You only get one, your wife or your baby. Which one are you taking home? My mom was then in a hospital for a full year recovering from that toxemia. This was a life-threatening experience for her.
Thank you. We'll move on to the follow-up. Staying with you, Ms. Tant, what are your thoughts on recreational marijuana amendment? Will you be voting for it? Why or why not? 1 minute.
I will not be using recreational marijuana, but I am also going to be voting for the ballot initiative. And the reason for that is because we're lacing our products right now. Marijuana products are being grown in cottage industries. We've got to put a stop to that. They're being laced with other products, including fentanyl, which is deadly to our population. Law enforcement, I think, is going to be able to come up with a saliva swab test to make sure that they can catch people who are driving with marijuana in their systems. We've got to regulate it. We've got to basically treat it like alcohol. And I think the revenues generated from that should be targeted towards alcohol and drug abuse and mental health.
Thank you. Mr. Brass, same question.
Yeah, so again, I mean, it's a ballot initiative that's been put on the ballot by the people of the state of Florida, and they're going to have the ultimate choice this November. So whether you're for or you're against it, people need to come out and vote for it, and the people of Florida are ultimately going to decide. When these issues start to come before the legislature, and they're not going to be so inflamed, such as this election, I'm happy to answer what my opinion on those would be in the legislature, but we're not going to touch them. So the people of Florida are going to decide this November.
Mr. Brass, when you announced your candidacy, the chair of the Leon County Republican Party wasn't sure if he knew a Spencer Brass. So that raises the questions, when and why did you decide to seek elected office, and who did you speak to before getting into this race?
So I knew that I was going to run for public office when I was like 15, 16 years old. I've always been very involved in local races down in Pasco County. I've always had a very unique interest in public office. I grew up in the FFA and 4-H, and those organizations really teach you how to be a leader. So it wasn't a matter of if, it was just a matter of when. And I was having many conversations with lots of people in our community as I was working on these homelessness issues, these mental health issues, and just really taking this as a global perspective, like, man, there needs to be some change. And talking to people, the very incestuous nature of Tallahassee politics is ripe for change. And so I got in the race, I saw the opportunity, and here we are.
Thank you. Ms. Tant, you've been in office for 4 years. What's your response to the Republican argument, your opponent's argument, that is, that as a member of the GOP, this seat could perform more effectively for this district.
Well, obviously, I disagree with them since I've actually passed 14 substantive proposals in the legislative arena in 4 years. And I've also gotten millions of dollars in funding for all 3 of my counties that I'm very proud of. I come at this job as a problem solver. I come at this job to reach across party lines and find ways to arrive at a solution. That is why I've been able to get things done, because I've always focused on what we can get done, what we have in common, finding that common ground, and then getting it done, which is why I've been able to get done what I've been able to get done in the legislative arena.
Mr. Brass, one of our viewers has contacted us with a question for you. You said earlier that being affiliated with the Republican Party, the majority party, that it would be better for the district, but the majority party, writes Donna Held, is opposed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Will you stand up to that?
Oh, Donna Held, her and I, we've gone rounds on Facebook. She loves to make lots of comments. So the whole DEI thing, I mean, it's frankly, it's ludicrous. Again, like what I said before, as someone who is a member of the LGBTQ community, people don't care. And if we stop making it such an inflamed argument, people don't care. So if everyone would just simmer down about it, it doesn't have to exist. People can coexist with each other as long as we don't continue to inflame it. When you start shoving things down people's throat every single day, no matter what it is, no matter if it's religion, no matter if it's where they have to shop, the kind of car they have to drive, where they have to live, everyone is naturally going to push back. It's human nature. So if we just stop, if we let the inflammation come down, everyone can exist just fine.
Thank you. Ms. Tant, would you like to respond to the idea that advocates for DEI should simmer down?
Well, in my view, we do have to go back and look at that DEI law that we passed. I do think that we have to recognize that we do have to honor diversity, equity, and inclusion in this state. And the reason I say that is I'm the mother of a child who's now 26 years old, who a generation ago would have been institutionalized because of his disabilities. And so we have come so far as a society because we have broken down barriers for inclusion among people who are different from us. And I think that diversity, equity, inclusion is a core value of us as human beings, that we should be encouraged to embrace each other and the way that we are different. And that's what I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is meant to address.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that brings us to our infamous lightning round. And the instructions on this one is please limit your response to one sentence, a short declarative sentence, not a run-on sentence with about 14 independent clauses. Can you do that?
Sure.
Okay, good. Let's start then, beginning with you, Ms. Tant. Who are you voting for at the top of the ticket in the presidential race?
I'm voting for Kamala Harris because I think that she is going to do most for the everyday citizens of our country.
Okay, Mr. Brass.
Who does me voting for president have an impact on the people of District 9? I want to talk about real issues.
All right. Starting with you, sir. Do you believe Joe Biden won the presidency in a fair election? And what's your confidence in this year's election?
Yeah, I think that the elections are going to continue to get more secure as we go along. I mean, do I think that there was mass amounts of cheating? No, but do I think that there's an opportunity to continue to make them more secure? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tant.
Repeat the question, sorry.
Yeah, do you believe Joe Biden won the presidency in a fair election, and what is your incidence of confidence in the electoral process?
I do believe he was elected duly, and I do believe that our elections process is secure.
Okay, very good. If you could immediately enact a Florida law, Ms. Tant, what would it be?
I would fully fund the med waiver wait list and the wait list for senior citizens to get in-home care.
Okay, Mr. Brass.
That in order to graduate high school, you have to take a financial literacy course.
Okay, if you could invalidate a Florida law, which one would that be?
A loaded question. I haven't thought about that one.
Anything spring to mind?
Not really.
Oh, okay, Ms. Tant.
I would repeal the abortion ban, the 6-week abortion ban, and go back to the 15-week.
Okay.
with some exceptions.
Terrific. And finally, Ms. Tant, what's the biggest single contribution that you've made to your community in your estimation?
Oh, my goodness. Working with everybody and anybody who will come together to work to solve problems, resulting in my favorite project, which is Independence Landing, but I have a host of issues along the way I could bring to the table.
Okay, Mr. Brass.
Yeah, I think it's continuing to work on this homeless issue in Tallahassee, continue moving the needle forward on that.
Okay, well, gee whiz, we're tired of all these questions that we've had to ask, so we're going to turn the tables on you guys here. It's your turn to ask your opponent a question. Starting with you, Mr. Brass, 1 minute for your response, Ms. Tant.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask a question that I've been getting a lot. Again, like I said, I've knocked tens of thousands of doors, and one of the questions that I'm getting is the exact fabric of the American dream is for people to be successful. But repeatedly on the campaign trail, all of your campaign, very personal attacks on me, is about the success that I've had and the fact that I drive a Porsche. But the question remains, you're worth nearly 3 times what I am, and you drive a Range Rover. So what's the difference?
I think that I'm really proud that you're successful, and I think that the American dream is working hard and getting ahead.
Okay, Ms. Tant, you get to turn the tables and ask one of Mr. Brass.
You know, I've sat here listening to the scurrilous comments that you've made about my voting record that aren't true, the half-truths, the lies you've told, and the lies that have been going on around my campaign. I ask questions, what do you want me to ask of my opponent? And the question that I got was, if we can't trust what you're telling us now, how are we going to trust you if you're elected?
Everything that I have done is based in policy, it's based in public record, and it's all available in black and white.
Lies.
Okay, we're heading into the home stretch here. Have a few minutes left. In recent years, the Florida legislature has preempted local authorities on issues such as workers' benefits, gun control, environmental regulations. Earlier this year, lawmakers preempted a workplace heat safety regulation, which required shaded water breaks. Should the relationship between state and local government be redefined? Ms. Tant, let's start with you. 45 seconds.
I oppose that bill, and I think there's too much overriding of local governments who are closest to the people, who know what the people need, to take away heat safety and to take away water breaks in a state like Florida was really unconscionable in my view. And I think that we're overriding too much. I think we've got to go back to local control.
What do you say, Mr. Brass?
Yeah, so again, I wasn't in the legislature, didn't vote on it, don't know the exact nuances of it, but I do think that there does need to be a level of care with the local governments, trusting in the local government officials and leaders to make the best decisions for their people.
Staying with the idea of home rule, local control, we recently learned of plans to open state parks to more recreational ventures, such as golf courses and resort-style accommodations. Plans considered included pickleball and disc golf and McClay Gardens. None of the local governments or local support organizations were consulted. What do you think of further development of state parks for more recreational opportunities? Mr. Brass, you can go first, 45 seconds.
Yeah, so I mean, there are lots of state parks and federal parks and local parks that offer recreational opportunities. Do I think that there just needs to be a movement by the state government to come in and hammer these things down? No. I think that there was a lot of questions that continue to remain around those things. I do think that there's an opportunity, but it needs to be responsible and not just a hammer coming down. This is what we're going to do.
Ms. Tant?
As the sponsor of the bill that passed creating the state parks tag license plate that actually funds our state parks, I learned during that process in working with DEP how vitally important our state parks are and how they are preserving the original old Florida. They are protecting very vulnerable land, ecosystems, plant species, and animal species that are only found here and maybe in some instances only one other place in the world. This is an important an important and keystone thing for us to do in the state of Florida is to protect our parks and to be very careful about how we go. Our state parks are the only state parks in the country to be gold medal winners 4 times over the course of its existence.
Thank you.
Candidates, congratulations. You have hit beyond the home stretch, and the tape is in sight. You can break it here with a closing argument, and we'll start with you, Mr. Brass. You get 1 minute to wrap it up, please.
Yeah, so, I thank Allison for being here, and I thank you for congratulating me on my success, so maybe you'll tell your campaign consultants to stop attacking me for it. I think that it's very important for the voters to see here that, being in the majority party, you can absolutely get more done. Allison has done some great work in her tenure as the state representative. But like I said earlier, Tallahassee is ripe for new leadership. Tallahassee is ripe for somebody to come in, for somebody with new, fresh ideas to take the reins, to begin to really get Tallahassee's money worth. We pay so much in. Let's start to get some out. Jefferson and Madison County, those people need someone who's going to be able to hold the hands with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, with the Florida development opportunities to bring in good, high-paying jobs for those people so they can stay in their hometowns and they don't have to go out other places to get good, high-paying jobs. So I think on November 5th, the choice is clear, and I'll leave you with this. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better, and better isn't good enough if it can be best. You get the best with Brass. Thank you very much.
And Ms. Tant, you get the last word.
Thank you. I have been a resident of Leon County for the last 35 years, and during that time, I have led with heart and compassion and empathy to help anyone in a time of need. I am there. I show up. I've gone into Jefferson and Madison repeatedly. I am around this community repeatedly where I am doing the work of solving problems. I've sat here today, as you have, listening to my opponent avoid answering questions with a lack of transparency about who he's voting for president, which I'm told you're voting for Trump, about what you're going to do on Amendment 4, which I'm told you are supportive of abortion rights, but you don't want to go on the record with that. We have to be held to an account for the people of the state of Florida. Again, I'm an open book. I'm here for anybody and everybody who wants to come together to solve a problem, and I love representing this community, and I will continue to reach across partisan divide to get things done.
Our thanks to the candidates and to our audiences for joining us. Along with the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee, WFSU, and the Tallahassee Democrat for putting the program together. You can find a replay of this forum on our YouTube pages. And the recorded broadcast will be aired on Tuesday, October 15th at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on WFSU 88.9 FM. Please tell your friends.
And remember, early voting for the general election begins October 21 and ends November 3rd. Election day takes place on November 5th.
If you have questions for any of our upcoming forums, please email us at news@tallahassee.com. And you can look for our special election section of the Tallahassee Democrat with interviews with all the candidates on the ballots, which will be printed and inserted in the Sunday, October 13th edition. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, WFSU Public Media, and the Tallahassee Democrat, I'm James Call. Thank you, and have a great day.